We're going to continue on with our media availability for the Food City 500 with the driver, the number 11 Toyota Camry for Joe Gibbs Racing, Denny Hamlin. If you have a question for Denny, go ahead and raise your hand. We'll get a wireless microphone to you. We'll start with Dustin and then go to John.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Since you were in the back of the room, I'm sure you heard what I asked Christopher. Talking about superstars, how do you define what is a superstar in this series and in this era where the competition is closer? It's harder to get those big win seasons. Can there still be superstars based off of performance? I'm sorry if that was too heavy for your first question.
I mean, it's the age-old question, right? It's what do you want? I mean, if you want to see certain drivers be able to do what other drivers cannot, you have to make things different. You have to make it harder to drive, harder to all that stuff. But right now, I think, if you put 20 cars in the lead with 10 to go, they're going to win. And that's the star in that is the track position, because the cars are all the same and there's not as difficult to drive. So I think it's all relative. Certainly it's less likely. Now you can have those big seasons in NASCAR as long as you've got a really good pit crew, good team. You still got to set up the cars. The drivers still got to have a good skill set, execute all those things. So I still think 8-9 win seasons are very possible. But I don't know if you're going to grow any superstars currently, the way it's going. I think that's just really, really tough, for sure.
What is you've been in the sport long enough, what is a talent that you were able to display 10, 15 years ago that maybe today's fans don't see as often, or maybe don't have the opportunity to appreciate as much as the sport has evolved?
I think just the ability to control pace of a car throughout a run. That was really my specialty kind of growing up, is that the ability to let cars go early in runs, to save something for the later part of the run. So then, there'd be multiple passes through a run for me and other cars. So maybe 4 cars, 5 cars sometimes would pass me at Martinsville, and then later in that run I'd pass them back. So that's double the passes that would happen. And now everyone fights for the first few laps of restart, and then you're just staying from that point on. So that's where, when you kind of get into green flag passes and stuff, it's all really dependent on how many cautions there are. Every caution is 600 green flag passes, just because we're lined up 2 by 2. So I think that that's kind of what I was really good at in the short track days. But as tire wear started to reduce and power started to reduce, it's all become, just run as fast as you can every lap, and then, hang on from that point on. So it's just different, and I've had to evolve my skill set to accommodate, each car and each change that we've had.
Thank you.
Yep.
We're going to go to John, then to Jacob, then to Matt, then to Steven.
John Newby, NBC Sports. So Kamui was in here earlier, and he said that, there's an audience in Japan that would embrace having NASCAR over there. As a team owner, can I get your perspective on that? Is that an opportunity you would leap at to, I guess, grow like your team's brand?
Yeah, certainly. I think it's internationally is certainly opens up opportunities for brand awareness and team awareness and things like that. Yeah, I mean, the problem is their schedule there's just nowhere to fit it in, especially going over that far across the world. I think it'd be very, very difficult to make that happen. But I definitely think that there's a market for it, but it's just, I don't know whether it's feasible or not.
Jacob
Seelman, Race Face Digital. You've had success here in the night race. I know you're still looking for your first springtime win on the concrete, but given the concrete surface and the fact that it maybe isn't as temperature sensitive and isn't liable to change as much, can what you have success with in the fall translate to success in the spring race, even though we're running in the daytime?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of it is because I think nothing has changed since last fall with the cars, other than the bodies of the Toyotas. Nothing else has changed. So, we probably will, stay kind of in our home base where we feel pretty comfortable. And but yeah, I don't think there's any relation to. Daytona's the same way. I've won the 500. I've never won the other race. I've won the Bristol night race, just never won the other race, right? So I think it's just more circumstances and things like that in coincidence. But certainly believe that, since we've only been, I don't know, probably 12, 14 weeks since the last time we were here, I think not a ton has changed, so we can lean on that.
Go to Matt, then to Steven, then to Lee, then to Kelly.
Matt Weaver, Sportsnaut. Given that the last 2 years you were kind of right there on the edge of making the Final Four, and you could probably make a case that it came down to playoff points earned over the course of the year. It's early, but you're sitting at 0 now. When do you guys start to think about, hey, we need to be getting stage wins, race wins, stuff like that, to be able to pad yourself a little more going into Martinsville?
We're trying, certainly. I don't know where we're usually at this point of the season. I'd say we're probably, as good as we've been, maybe not since a few years ago, but just generally speaking, gap to the lead in points is we've been as close as we've been here this year, but certainly no stage wins and stuff to show for it. But we've just been close, just haven't really closed it. But we've only really run 2 tracks that, I feel myself and my team can control, really outright control winning those stages, and we've just been close, just not there. We've got some good stage points. We haven't had great finishes. There's also 0 in the top 10 column if we're really looking at it, but we know we're running well, so it'll come for sure.
And then kind of part of this larger horsepower conversation we're all having, if for whatever reason horsepower is just not on the table, it's not happening, there's lots of talk about how, whether it's the width of the tire, then you have to buy new wheels or whatever.
I don't want to do that, yeah.
Yeah, so like as a team owner, that's not even something that's on.
No.
Is it cost, or is it just the logistical
Cost.
racing?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just the cost, and then you got to redevelop another tire again, and then which means we also we'll have to do tire testing along with that. So I'd rather not do that for sure.
So then
from an ownership standpoint.
Yeah. So then for you, then is it just then we need to have more power? Period.
We do, yeah. Yes. Answers the same for sure.
Next to Steven.
Stephen Toronto, CBS Sports. Denny, I remember the last time we had the spring race here on concrete in 2019, and the big point of conversation after that weekend was how they didn't sell the turn 1, 2, 3, 4 grandstands, and everyone was kind of belly aching about, they screwed up Bristol, they ruined the track when they changed it. And I go back to the night race last year and even the year before that. This track has big crowds again, a lot of energy, fans are into it, they're popping off. Do you feel like Bristol as a venue and as a destination racetrack has gotten its mojo back the past couple of years?
Hope so, for sure. I think it's always puts on great racing as long as you're willing to look around, right? Certainly there's always passes going on, whether it be, because it's such a small racetrack, there's always side-by-side or some sort of overtaking going on. So there's a lot to take in that's very positive. But it's dilution at some point, right? You've got here, Martinsville, Richmond, all really, really close proximity and all with multiple dates. So the fan, I think we would all be guilty of it if we were just fans, right? And we lived in this area. Maybe we have something going on this week, and we're like, no problem, we'll catch the next one, or we'll just go to Martinsville instead, or we'll just go to Richmond. When you have that many options, you're always just going to put off and then not really capitalize on the actual moment. So it's really, really hard unless you're, the Phoenix Daytonas really seem to do really well with their 2 dates. For whatever reason, it's just hard because there's so many tracks in this little area that run multiple times.
And then do you think having this race on dirt for a couple years kind of helps the demand for the spring concrete race come back a bit, just to, have it go away for a little bit, and then people say, I'd like for the concrete race to come back. I like Bristol this way. I'd go to Bristol if it was like that. Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think there's validity in that?
I think there is. Certainly, we've seen in the sport many times we change to one thing when we go to the back, and then we go back, and we just keep flipping back and forth. A lot of it is just to create, hey, here's the storyline. This is different this week. So, and so I think that it keeps things from getting stale. But certainly when you don't have it as much, you always tend to want it more. And so that goes back to the dilution of how much we got here.
Gotcha. Thank you, Denny.
Mm-hmm.
Go to Lee, then to Kelly, then to Davey.
Lee Spencer, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio and Catchfence.com. You've really embraced the role of being the heel, Denny, and clearly with your comment about I beat your drivers, all of them. But my question to you is, when you go to your home track, Richmond, which you grew up, so close to that track, you would think when you come home, you're the hometown hero, and you get booed there. What kind of effect does it have, knowing that you should be the big swinging, walking into Richmond? And
I don't know what. Tell me.
And
people would call me that anyway.
Well, probably.
The what?
I haven't talked to Jordan lately, though. But it's just kind of. What does that feel like? Because, just to be even hated by the hometown crowd has to be brutal.
I just used to beat up their favorite drivers in the short tracks days, too, so that's why. I don't know. I just don't mind it. I really don't, because it's just noise. It's noise. There was many moments kind of sort of mid-career where there was just claps, and it's like, it's just not a needle mover one way or another. And so, and a lot of it comes just with success as well. If you're a contender each and every week, you're going to get more noise, and typically, I've had so many altercations with really popular drivers, and that just kind of fuels it as well. So I think certainly I've checked all the boxes of things that fans despise of. We've seen one that a previous driver, Joe Gibbs Racing, he just changes teams, and all of a sudden he's more liked. So when you have all the things that I've got in that box of negativity checked, you're just going to have to live that life.
Go next to Kelly, then to Davey, and my man in the back there.
Kelly, CrandallRacer.com. Denny, tomorrow's 5 races in. Next week we get on a road course for the first time. Are we at the point where we're starting to see, you think, any trends of kind of who has it, who doesn't when it comes to this season, or does anything stand out so far early on?
Yeah, I certainly think so. I think after this weekend, you certainly will be able to draw some sort of comparisons to who's good to start the season, because we've gone to these tracks kind of that are different. But if you have cars that consistently are running up front no matter what the track, then clearly their team has some sort of process that's really, really good, and bringing fast cars to the track. So I think certainly after this weekend, you can start to write some of those headlines of who's looking good the first part of the season, and then we'll go through the summer, right? And you're going to see some start to pick up their performance from there and start to peak right at the right time at the playoffs. So you'll definitely see some conclusions, but it doesn't mean anything really to the very end of the season.
Does anyone or anything stand out to you so far of just kind of big picture looking at things? Because I know obviously you like to review things, and you have the podcast so you can kind of talk about everyone and everything. So you watch these races closely. Has anything stood out to you?
Yeah, if from a media member, I would say, there's some teams struggling that you don't usually see, but I'm not going to give them any poster material, not today.
Davey Siegel with Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Your crew chief, Chris Gabehart, he gets really jacked up when he comes here. I think that was part of the reason why his emotions after you guys won in the fall was so evident. Do you notice anything different from him when you're leading into a Bristol race, whether it was last year, this year, anything like that?
Yeah, he's certainly motivated. Really, it's a lot of the short tracks because that's what he grew up doing as well is the oval short tracks. And so, this is, kind of what he feels like is his Super Bowl. So when we win the Bristol night race, it certainly is always really, really big for him. And we've just been really good here over the last few years. So he just always, he just, I don't know if he puts more emphasis on this race, but he certainly wants it more. So he's probably a little more critical of my driving on weekends like this than he is others.
And off of Kelly's question on the road courses, you seem to have upped your game a little bit, and especially in qualifying. I know you pointed to Tyler in the past as a reason as to why that performance has kind of upticked a little bit. Can you speak to your evolution in terms of road courses, whether it comes to qualifying and or the race?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of factors. I think that, this is kind of the benefit of having, one of the stronger road course drivers in the Toyota family. I think that there's many other Toyota drivers that are up and coming that are going to be challengers as well. And I just use any information I can to try to get better. Certainly, I know I'm one of the lower talented guys on the road courses, so I just try to do everything I can to learn from them and use all the resources I have.
Casey Marlar, WJHL, here in town. Can you comment, Denny, on the return to the road course next week at COTA and kind of the drastic change between where you're at this week to where you go next week?
Yeah, it's a lot different for sure. With the extended practice next week, I definitely feel a little better about getting up to speed before qualifying goes. But, I'll put the same to maybe a little more time on it simply because I'm not as familiar how to make really good speed on that track quite yet. But I feel confident we'll get there by the end of the week. It's just going to take a little time, and certainly a lot different mindset from my standpoint from just leaning on my experience and know what I'm fighting at one track. If I'm working on it for this track this week, I kind of know what I need to look for. Where at COTA, I'm just kind of looking at everyone else's stuff to see how do I compare.
Well, Denny, thanks for joining us today, and good luck
Thanks.
this weekend.